Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday presented by the University of Arizona Health Sciences. I'm Caroline Berger, Director of Corporate and Community Relations for the University of Health Sciences in Phoenix, and I'd like to join you and welcome our team, led by Allison O'Toole and Anne-Marie Medina, our Director in Tucson. We're so glad that you could join us today. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Health Sciences.
Welcome to the University of Arizona Health Sciences. As the statewide leader in biomedical research and health professions training, Health Sciences includes College of Medicine Tucson, College of Medicine Phoenix, College of Nursing, College of Pharmacy, and the Melanina Zuckerman College of Public Health. Together, they provide cutting-edge health education, breakthrough research, and a diverse offering of community outreach services. At the heart of Health Sciences, our employees, nearly 5,000, along with 4,000 students, makes us one of the top employers in the state. Our growing research and education programs are offered on two campuses, one at the main campus in Tucson and the other in the heart of downtown Phoenix on the biomedical campus. The University of Arizona Health Sciences is a major contributor to New Arizona's well-earned reputation as one of the country's top research institutions. And each year, we receive more than $200 million in research grants and contracts, providing vital funding to help address some of our most critical healthcare challenges. We are grateful for this support, which is fueling discoveries and treatments in areas including cardiovascular disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and now COVID-19. The University of Arizona Health Sciences is also in a unique position to affect change in a rapidly shifting healthcare landscape. As part of our strategic plan, we have developed a set of initiatives to reshape the future of healthcare. We are focusing our efforts on 5 important areas: next generation education, precision healthcare for all, making wellness ageless, creating defenses against disease, and new frontiers for better health. Through these strategic initiatives, we have unprecedented opportunities to excel in education and research in more and better ways than ever before, and we invite you to join us on this journey. Please know that our dedicated corporate and community relations team is here to be your connector with Health Sciences. Thank you for your dedication and for all that you do to make our communities healthy.
So as you can see, there's a lot going on. So a quick question for you. Got antibodies? If you're one of the few that has already been vaccinated, we want to invite you to now be tested to see if you have the antibodies. As part of a statewide research study, the University of Arizona is analyzing blood samples of hundreds of thousands of Arizonians to determine who has developed antibodies against COVID-19. There's a link here, but we will be sure to send this to you in our post-event email, so you'll have all the information. And speaking of staying connected and in touch, we invite you to reach out and learn more about health sciences at the University of Arizona. Visit us at uahs.arizona.edu and be sure to follow us on all the social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and more. And I invite you to follow me on Twitter at CEBerger. Today, you're in for a real treat. A question: when was the last time you got a good night's sleep? Well, today you're going to get some help and some answers to help you overcome that. So we invite you to leave a question in the chat function. We are going to start out. Dr. Gradner is going to be taking some time and doing a wonderful presentation. And then we are going to allow time for a designated question and answer session. So please feel free, he's shaking his head, to send us those questions. That's what we're here for. You will be receiving a post-session email that will include an evaluation for a brief survey, including we're going to make sure that you have all the links and resources that are shared here today, including you're going to get a link to the video tape of today, so that where you can share it with friends and family as well. And plus, you'll also receive links so that you can go on our Wellness Wednesday YouTube channel and find out even more help and information that's been presented. So let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Gradner, who is the director of the Sleep and Health Research Program at the University of Arizona. He is also director of behavioral sleep medicine at the Banner University Medical Center and an associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Arizona College of Medicine, with joint appointments in the departments of medicine, psychology, nutritional sciences, and clinical translational science. He is certified in behavioral sleep medicine and is a diplomat in behavioral sleep medicine. His research focuses on how sleep and sleep-related behaviors are related to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, mental health, and longevity. Please welcome Dr. Gradner.
Hi, thanks for inviting me and for that great and generous introduction. So let me get started here. I've got some slides here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep and aging and a little bit also about sleep and the immune system. And then hopefully we'll leave some time for any sleep-related questions that people have. So first, a little bit about aging. I'm going to just briefly mention, what do we know about sleep across the lifespan, about sleep disorders across the lifespan, our own experience of sleep health across the lifespan, and resilience. First of all, a little bit about what changes with sleep. So the factor that is I think the clearest change across age is this concept of sleep efficiency. So sleep efficiency refers to the relationship between how much time you're in bed are you actually spent asleep. So people who take a while to fall asleep or who are up more during the night, they have lower sleep efficiency because they're spending more time in bed actually awake. And so here's some data that charted decades worth of data from the laboratory showing that as people get older, you can see age across here, sleep efficiency in general declines, where younger people have much higher sleep efficiency. And as people get older, it tends to decrease. You're more likely to be spending more time awake in bed. So when you look at all the different sleep stages and aspects of sleep across the lifespan, this is sort of what you see. You see, from childhood to older age, you can see stage 1 is pretty light sleep, sort of starts increasing a little bit. Stage 2, also kind of light sleep, pretty steady most of the night. So this is slow wave sleep, which is deep sleep. You can see it generally decreases a little bit with age, especially starting at age 55. You have REM sleep, which is pretty constant, might decrease a little bit. You have the sleep latency. This is how long it takes you to fall asleep, might increase a little bit. But this important one here is WASO or WASO. This is wake after sleep onset. This is time in bed awake during the night. And you could see this increases as people get older. So you can see what happens with age is that sleep becomes a little lighter, less deep, and more awakening during the night. That's just typical. Here's some more recent data looking at data from about 1 million people with wearables across, this is from Europe, basically showing that men and women, as they get older, their wake time during the night increases. This is an extremely reliable finding that as we get older, you spend a little more time awake during the night. That is normal. Other things happen too to circadian rhythms. So here's a graph. Let me walk you through it. Here's age again. This is chronotype. You notice it goes from early to late. What chronotype is that this is a reflection of where your biological night is. So everyone has a biological night where their body wants to be asleep. So when you look at the clock and the clock says midnight, what does your body say? If you have a typical biological clock, your body says, oh, it's midnight, it's kind of late. If you have an early chronotype, you look at the clock, the clock says midnight, your body says, oh my gosh, it's 3 in the morning, it's so late. So people with early chronotypes, they go to bed early and they wake up early, their whole thing is shifted. People with a late chronotype are more the night owls. They look at a clock, the clock says midnight, their body says it's only 9 or 10 p.m. And so there's still plenty of time left. And so early chronotype means you go to bed early, your night is early, and late chronotype means late. Here's what happens over the lifespan. You have men and women here. That when kids wake up very early, and then as they become teenagers, They drift later and later and later and later and later until it peaks right around here in the early 20s. And then it starts drifting back down. And this is why teenagers have a really hard time getting up in the morning, because when their clock says 6 a.m., their body says 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever. And so it's really hard to get up. But then as people get older, their clocks drift earlier and earlier and earlier. And it's more profound, seems to be, in men than in women. But that's why, and as people get older, they have a much easier time waking up early. Actually, sometimes they wake up too early because they drift a little too early. One of the issues behind this is a change in melatonin. Now, melatonin is a hormone that your body secretes at night. It tells your body it's nighttime. But as we get older, it gets secreted in the dark. And you can see across different age groups, you have a reduction in melatonin, especially a reduction in how much you're secreting at night, which might lead to more disrupted sleep at night and less control over your rhythms, a less strong and pronounced sleep-wake cycle. A little bit about sleep itself. This is the amount of hours people get. So you can see across pretty much all age groups, this is nationally representative data from the US, that a little more than half of people are getting 7 to 8 hours. And that you have some people here who are getting 9 or more hours. Some of them are teenagers because they need a little more sleep. But then, and it decreases with age until people retire, and then all of a sudden, people can sleep in a little more again. If you look at the short sleepers, though, this is the problem. This is where you get some health risks with these short sleepers. And you can see that about, a third of the population aged 30 to 65 are getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep. And about 5%, 4 to 5% here are getting less than 5 hours, so 4 or fewer hours of sleep. And that's pretty consistent here. And you can see the short sleep then declines a little bit once people retire. Insomnia. So insomnia refers not to how much you sleep, but it refers to how much you're struggling to get to sleep. So if it takes you a long time to fall asleep, or you're up a lot during the night, that's insomnia. And you could see insomnia does increase a bit with age, especially in women. They're more likely to have insomnia. Sleep apnea is another disorder that increases with age. So here's men and women, age 30 to 49, and then 50 to 70. And what you can see is when you divide it out by level of obesity, so this is body mass index. So under 25 is sort of normal weight, 25 to 30 is overweight but not obese. Over 30 is obesity, where a lot of the population is actually, and 40 plus is high levels of obesity. And what you can see as your body size increases, risk for sleep apnea increases in both men and women. But you can see even normal weight men, age 30 to 49, you have, maybe 1 in 20 still have at least mild sleep apnea. And then once you get to age 50, that increases by a lot. Even normal weight men, you're talking about almost 1 in 5, much less if you're obese, it's more than half. In women too, you can see that it increases a little bit with age, that even women over 50, you have a lot of women with sleep apnea. But it's complicated. So we know that as you get older, your sleep gets a little more broken up. You're more at risk for some sleep disorders. It's more likely to be shallow, but there's some recent evidence that suggests that getting older doesn't necessarily mean sleeping poorly, at least based on how you feel about your sleep. So here's some data from Italy that showed that when you compare a younger group and an older group, that it's actually the younger group had lower satisfaction with their sleep. And if this is the case, our approach to sleep across the lifespan would have to shift dramatically. It's not just it always gets worse. Not every element of sleep gets worse. Some things get better. So here we looked at data from about 150,000 people across the US, men and women, who's reporting at least 3 nights a week that they're having difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep or oversleeping. What you can see here, actually the trend is a decline with age. That's more pronounced in women. And you can see that actually in both men and women, the age group that reports the most sleep disturbance is the 18 to 24-year-olds. And it actually goes down with age. And here you see this increase in women between 40 and 59 and 60-ish. You have an increase here, but even still, this isn't as high as it was at 18 to 24. And then even daytime fatigue holds pretty steady for men. Around age 70, it starts picking up. For women, daytime fatigue just sort of drops. Actually, the most fatigued women are younger. And as they get older, their actually fatigue complaints actually decrease. And then again, right around age 65, they start increasing again. But then once you statistically control for things like health and mental health and access to care and things like that, actually it's even more pronounced. This is the slope of the line for both men and women. And they're like right on top of each other, that there's a general decrease in sleep disturbance with age. And actually, no group was statistically less likely than the 80-year-olds to be reporting sleep disturbance. This was, I'm having a problem after you control for all these things. Actually, same thing with daytime fatigue. That increase in fatigue at around age 70, that was all explained by, that was actually a health issue, not an age issue. As people get older, actually, they might be experiencing less fatigue after you adjust for the age issues. So this actually turns things on its head. This has been replicated a bunch of times. Here's another analysis from 320,000-ish adults asking how many nights a week they don't get enough sleep. It drops with age. This is the line, and this is after you adjust for things like demographics and socioeconomics and other health conditions and all this stuff. It's still, it drops with age. And it plateaus right around 65, or around when people retire. Once people retire, they feel like they get as much sleep as they want. And actually it decreases. That this not getting enough sleep decreases. This is another study where we looked at sleep debt. The difference between how much sleep you get and how much sleep you think you need, it actually decreases and then plateaus right around age 70. Actually, the people with the most sleep debt are in their 20s. So some aspects of sleep actually get better. And another thing that seems to get better with age is resilience. So the relationship between short sleep and not getting enough sleep and health is well documented. People who get less than 6 hours of sleep are more likely to gain weight, be obese, get diabetes, have high blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, except if you're older. And the relationship between how much sleep you're getting and the development of these health conditions actually weakens with age. Why? Maybe you become more resilient. Maybe there's just other things at play at that point. But when you're in your 20s and 30s, sleep is playing a big role in your health. But by the time you're in your 60s and 70s, maybe it doesn't matter as much. Maybe it's not having as big of an impact. Certainly with sleep deprivation. So this is one of my favorite studies on sleep deprivation, where they took younger people and older people in the lab and sleep deprived them. And what you could see is if you ask people how impaired they were, their level of impairments was about the same. And the same thing with their level of alertness. But when you actually tested their performance, the older group actually overestimated how impaired they were. The younger group dramatically underestimated how impaired they were. The young people thought they were hanging in there, but really they were falling apart. Where the older people thought that they weren't doing so great, but they were doing okay, but they were actually doing better than they thought. So older people might be more resilient to sleep loss in general. So it's not all bad news about aging and sleep. So I also want to turn the page a little bit, talk about the immune system. So sleep health is related to foundational immunologic functions. The foundational properties of the immune system are somewhat tied to sleep health. It impacts the likelihood for contracting illnesses and impacts recovery from illnesses. Exposures during the day are processed and consolidated during sleep. This plays a role with memory. This is why sleep is so involved in memory consolidation and learning and brain function, because we take in experiences during the day and we process them and organize them in sleep when we're disconnected from the environment. Well, our immune system seems to do the same thing, where we have, just like with memory, we encode a memory, then we consolidate that memory, and then we can recall it. Well, the same thing happens in the immune system. We get exposed to some sort of foreign body or something, and we have these antigens, and then we have this immune response that learns how to respond to these substances, and then later when we get re-exposed to them, our body knows what to do. And it turns out that sleep, this SWS, slow wave sleep, this deep sleep is critical in this process of taking on our exposures from the day and turning them into immune memory at night. Here's an image of the immune system. So there's different parts of the immune system. We're not going to go into this in detail because that would be out of scope, but you have this first line of defense, which is like your skin, where things have to penetrate. Then you have the innate immunity. This is like how you fight things off. And then you have the adaptive immunity, where this is how your body remembers and responds to things in the future. And so there's different mechanisms. These are the different biological pathways for each of these sort of immune responses. And I put this up there to show you that sleep is actually related to all three of them. So laboratory studies show this two-way relationship between the immune system and sleep. So sleep changes can be induced by cytokines, which are immune molecules, prostaglandins, and infection. So the immune system itself can cause changes in sleep. In the next slide, I'll talk about what some of those would be. But also, sleep changes can impact the immune system, where one night of sleep deprivation and even subchronic sleep deprivation can impact single immune cells, can impact vaccination response, where your body doesn't respond to the vaccines in the same way, and can impact infection and outcome risk. This is from laboratory-based studies. Out in the field, it's hard, you can't tell which comes first. You're looking at things together. Field studies also show this two-way relationship, that sleep changes during chronic immune activation, that there are associations between how much sleep you get with things like vaccine response and infection risk, and immune measures. So like how your immune system is functioning is correlated with how much sleep you get and what the quality of your sleep in general is. So this is in the lab, but also out in the real world, we see these relationships, even where it's messier. And what are all the different things that can play a role? You know, things like how much sleep deprivation you had and why will impact. When you sampled the molecules will change, because these change time of day and what kind of assays and all these sorts of things. But this goes to show that there's this two-way relationship, and it can be impacted by things like stress and age and light and all these other things. So how does stress impact sleep through the immune system? So there's different types of immune stressors that impact sleep in different ways. Smaller stressors increase non-REM sleep. So a small stress elevates non-REM sleep. So non-REM sleep is where you get the deep sleep, where it's involved in a lot of recovery and healing, for example. Moderate stressors actually even stronger increase your drive for non-REM sleep, and they actually slightly decrease your REM sleep drive, but to maybe make room for it. Where what you're doing is you're driving more of a need for sleep. That's when you're sick, you get more tired and you need more sleep. But when you get a very intense stressor, it actually reduces your sleep. So moderate stressors actually increase your sleep drive, but more intense stressors keep you up and cause insomnia, and they get in the way of sleep. So it actually depends on the level of immune stressors in your system. So a couple ways that sleep impacts immunity. This is some great data from my colleague Eric Prather up at UCSF. He looks at sleep and getting sick. So here's one study where he had people wear a wrist-based sleep tracker, and they looked at how much sleep people were getting and who caught a cold. And you could see as people got more sleep, their likelihood of catching colds went down. Here's another study which had two parts. One, they looked at how much sleep people got, and the other one looked at whether they had poor sleep quality. And here you can see, especially the people getting 5 or less hours of sleep were more likely to not only get a cold, which this other study showed, but they were more likely to catch other diseases too, such as flu, pneumonia, and ear infection. So they were 50% more likely to catch these. Irrespective of how much sleep they got, if they had sleep disturbance, where they had problems sleeping, not just how much sleep they got, but if they had problems, again, that also increased their likelihood for colds and other diseases too, other infections too, such as influenza, pneumonia, and ear infections that increased their likelihood. So the people who weren't getting enough sleep or not sleeping well were more likely to have disturbed sleep. And so this impacts with COVID. I'm not going to be displaying all the COVID data because that's a little beyond the scope of this, but that's why we're studying sleep in COVID. A lot of people, they were kept up for one reason or another, and not sleeping is increasing people's risk, while at the same time, COVID itself and is causing increased stress and mental health issues, which is impacting the sleep. So I just wanted to mention that sleep is playing a role potentially here in the whole COVID pandemic in terms of modulating people's risk, modulating people's response to when they get sick or get a vaccination, and just even the fear and the social changes are impacting sleep as well. So I want to end with this idea of sleep in context. So here's sleep. Here's all the downstream effects of sleep, all the things that sleep touches, whether it's your metabolism, cardiovascular, immunologic, mental, behavioral, and cognitive health. These are all related to each other, and they're all related to sleep. And they exist in context. This is in context of your individual level factors like your age and where you live and your decisions and your behaviors and your beliefs and your attitudes. All these things drive sleep. But you're embedded within a social level. These are things that you're a part of, like your job and your family and your neighborhood and your social networks. All these things drive your individual level beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors around sleep. So we have to recognize the context here. And even still, there's the societal level, things like technology and globalization and discrimination and climate change, and these things that will impact the social level factors like jobs and commutes and things like that, and networks, which impact the individual, which impacts your sleep in your bedroom tonight. And this is the whole context of where sleep fits in globally with health. So for healthy sleep and immunity, shoot for 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. Keep a regular schedule 7 days a week if you can. Your body doesn't know what a weekend is. It's time, you want to have your time to fall asleep be less than a half an hour, spend less than a half an hour awake during the night. And most sleep should occur in the biological night where your body wants to sleep. So thank you for your attention. Here's our website for our lab if you're ever interested. Here's all the students in our lab this year. And we're grateful for our funding support for the different grants we're working on. So thank you very much. And I'm here for questions.
Right, that's wonderful. Yes, please send us submit your questions via the chat function, and we are getting some in now. How about some suggestions to assist with getting to sleep and staying asleep?
Yeah, okay, so a few suggestions that I have. First of all, the best suggestion I have for sleep health, it's a little counterintuitive, but trust me, there's decades of data on this, that you want to minimize the time you're in bed awake doing anything other than sleeping, because you don't want the bed to turn into the dentist chair. You don't want the bed to be the place where you're awake and tossing and turning and that has all this baggage attached to it. You want the bed to be so closely tied to sleep that even if you are a little bit awake and stressed and your mind's going a mile a minute, you get into bed, the bed itself becomes a signal to sleep. You want to make it so that if you're in bed, you're either in the act of falling asleep or you get up or you're asleep. The more rigorous you could be about that, it'll actually help you sleep more in the long run, even if tonight you're spending less time in bed. So number one, bed equals sleep, bed equals sleep, bed equals sleep. Number two, give yourself enough time to wind down at night. Most people don't give themselves enough time to detach, where they get into bed and they say their mind just keeps going. Well, most of the time, that's because you taught yourself to do that because you did it so often. So the bed becomes the place where you're thinking. So this gets into getting out of bed. But the reason you did that in the first place is, like if you're driving a car and you want to stop at a stop sign, you don't start tapping your brakes right when you're at the stop sign. You have to slow down first. You have to give yourself enough time to stop. And where if you start pressing your brakes right when you're at the stop sign, you end up overshooting and you're still moving past the stop sign in the middle of the intersection. That's what happens to your mind. If you don't start tapping the brakes till you're already in bed, you're going to end up taking that wakefulness energy with you into the bed, and it's going to take that time to wind down. It's not the car's fault. There's nothing wrong with your brakes. It's just physics. It's how the world works. You can't just turn off a light switch and go from being busy and distracted and having all this stuff on your mind to immediately being able to shut off. So you need to give yourself enough time to wind down, detach, and have yourself ready for sleep by the time it comes. And then the third thing is, one of the best way to get to sleep faster and more reliably is actually to have a regular wake-up time, because that'll set your clock for when your body is going to anticipate going to sleep. And if you keep that wake-up time regular, especially if you pair it with bright light, a little bit of movement, that can get your clock going so that about 16 to 17 hours later, it'll be more ready for sleep. And it'll help improve your energy and mood during the day as well. So those are my top 3 sort of take home.
Great advice for sleep and waking up. That's wonderful. What are your thoughts and recommendations for sleep aids, medications, and or supplements?
Okay, first of all, this is really important. If you have a sleep disorder, the likelihood that you'll be able to fix it on your own is lower. So like if you have occasional problem sleeping, I don't know, over-the-counter stuff might be okay. Actually, the data on this behavioral stuff that I just told you generally outperforms anything you can buy over the counter. The data are actually stronger for that than anything you can buy over the counter, sometimes even stronger than prescriptions. So do that first. If you want to buy something over the counter, go ahead. There's data on melatonin. There's data on a number of these things, on some of the supplements. The data are not super strong, but if you have a sleep disorder, that's not what they're for. They're not there to treat an insomnia or anything like that. They're there to maybe help fix a more minor problem. If they don't work, it's okay. There are people like me that treat these things day in and day out. If you're in Tucson, or if you're in Phoenix, there are clinics in town. Wherever you are, if you have trouble finding someone, here's my email address, there's my Twitter handle, reach out to me. I can help connect you with somebody. It's like, if you're feeling a little down, go for a walk, do meditation, there are things you can do for your own. But once you cross the line into clinical depression, you need to see a mental health professional. So if you're struggling with sleep problems and nothing seems to work, well, come to a sleep clinic. We know the right questions to ask, and we know how to apply the right treatments. Most sleep problems are highly treatable, and a lot of people don't even know they have a sleep disorder. They just think they're struggling. Or some people think they have insomnia, but really it's sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome or something. So yeah, if you're struggling, try some of this stuff. Don't have your hopes up too much, because that's not what they're for. They're not to fix a major problem. If you have a major problem, come to a sleep professional. We know what to do.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dr. Gradner. If you will stop sharing your screen, I will go ahead and we will close this out for this session of Wellness Wednesday. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. We invite you to come back 2 weeks from now. Yes, with the art of container growing vegetables in small spaces, can't say that fast, with Rebecca Senior. Great information for growing herbs and plants and vegetables and things if you've got a small space, and even some hints if you've got if you're fortunate to have a large space as well. Another thing to mark on your calendar, happening a week from this Saturday, we are first ever Connect to STEM drive-through experience from 9 a.m. to noon, which is going to be happening here on the Phoenix Biomedical Campus in downtown Phoenix. We'll be sending you more information on both of these events in our post-event email that you'll receive another day or two. So thank you again from all of us here at the University of Arizona Health Sciences for joining us for this Bites of Health and Wellness information today. And hopefully you're going to be able to take this great information, get a good night's sleep, which you've learned today is going to lead to lots better health and wellness overall. On behalf of Allison, Anne-Marie, and myself, stay well, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks from now. Take care.